This is my 2005 Ford GT, and this is a $17,000 license plate. Today I'm going to explain why that is, and I'm also going to explain why I've already spent around $28,000 on this car, even though I've only had it for a few weeks. And then I'm going to cover some of the costs of owning an exotic sports car like this. Now, before I get started, a couple of important items to note. Number one, this is my last Ford GT update that is going to appear on my main channel, Doug DeMuro. All future GT updates and interesting things that happen with the car will appear on my second channel, More Doug DeMuro, which I will link in the description below. You gotta go there if you wanna see more on the GT in the future. Number two, I also wanna cover why my garage looks like I live in a hoarder house. It's because my wife and I moved into a rental place that has furniture in it, and so we put all of our stuff in the garage while we wait to find a home to buy. I mention this because otherwise everyone would bring it up in the comments, and so I just want to avoid that straight away. But with that in mind, let's talk about costs. Now, I want to start with getting a loan on a car like this. I finance all of my cars. There's some reasonable debate either way about whether this is a good idea, but I personally think that it's better not to tie up this much cash in a car, instead to keep your cash free and use it to invest or to buy a house like I'm trying to. This really only works when interest rates are low, but they're still pretty low. And so it makes sense to kind of finance as much as you can and keep the money liquid, and so you can do other stuff with it. That's my personal opinion. Now, the real question you probably have is, who finances a car like this? I've always used Pentagon Federal Credit Union. They are a military credit union, but anybody can join. You just make a small donation to a military charity, and then you're a member. I'm not shilling for them. I don't even think they know who I am. I'm just a guy who finances weird cars through them, but they seem to be able to finance anything. They did my Hummer, my horrible old yellow Hummer. They did my Aston Martin, and they did this. And every time I need a loan on a weird car, I call them, they do it, and it doesn't seem to be a problem. Now, next up, maybe more interesting, is insurance. When I got this car, one of the main benefits I pointed out was that this car isn't really going to lose a lot of value, so I won't lose much money in it. And a lot of people replied and said, well, insurance is going to be so expensive for a car like this, you're going to get killed. Well, actually, my insurance premium isn't so bad. Here's my policy document. I'm paying $937.44 per 6 months for this car, which means it costs about $1,900 a year to insure. That's kind of a lot, but not that much when you consider how expensive the car is. And check this out, my 2012 E63 station wagon, which is worth about $40,000, it costs $1,049.71 per 6 months, which comes out to $2,100 a year. In other words, my 2012 Mercedes station wagon costs more to insure than my Ford GT supercar. Now, I want to explain why this is, because in my experience, this is always the case. A lot of people think insuring a car like this is very expensive, but insurance companies aren't stupid, and they know that most of these are going to old men who park them in their garage and only polish them with a diaper and barely ever drive them, and so the risk really isn't all that high. As a result, none of the high-end, crazy, exotic sports cars I've owned, Aston Martin, Ferrari 360, Dodge Viper, none of them have been tremendously expensive to insure. Insurance companies are really good with determining actual loss rates. This is why I always go crazy when I hear people say, oh, that car has back seats to fool the insurance companies. No. Insurance companies employ actuaries who spend an enormous amount of time figuring out exactly what is going to crash and when. Trust me, they're not fooled by back seats. And they make their determinations on insurance rates based on previous losses, crashes, that sort of thing. And a car like this just isn't crashed all that often. Now, next up, I want to talk about the $17,000 license plate. Yes, that is what this license plate cost me, about $3,000 per letter or number, and the reason for that obviously is sales tax. Now, this has nothing to do with California. I live in California, and every time I mention California, some people are like, the liberals, they're gonna get you with their taxes. But the truth is, most states have sales tax, usually between 6, 7, 8%. California's is right in there, and so when you pay sales tax on a car that costs over $200,000, it comes out to $15,000, $16,000, $17,000 just to get your license plate. At least the one I have has a nice little sunset on it and some palm trees. Now, some of you might be watching and thinking, well, you're just an idiot, because what all supercar owners do now is they register their cars in Montana and they don't pay any sales tax. And this is true. I am an idiot, but also supercar owners register in Montana. You can register in Montana with an LLC. The car never has to show up in the state, and you don't pay any sales tax. There's a few reasons, though, why I chose not to do this. reasons. One is visibility. I'm driving these cars around in videos. I don't want people to see a Montana plate because I know of the 2 million people who watch every video, one guy is going to call the cops and then they're going to come to my door and arrest me. I just don't want to put up with it. But there's other stuff too. One is, you know, I'm an adult. I can pay the taxes on the things that I buy. I budgeted that when I bought the car. I could have bought a nicer one if I didn't have to pay the taxes, but welcome to life in the world. You got to pay taxes on your purchases. Whether or not you like it, and I have opinions about that, you got to do it. And that's just kind of how it is. Another big reason I didn't do the Montana thing, though, is there's kind of a pride that comes with it. I roll up to Cars and Coffee. I got a California license plate. Yeah, I paid my taxes. What about you? I was at a Cars and Coffee last week, and some guy was there with a GT3 RS, and some cops showed up. I think just to like look at the cars, and the guy freaked out and took off. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to ever think about that. I just drive around with my correct license plate, and I don't have to think about, oh, it's a company name in Montana. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And so, yeah, you know, it's expensive, but it's peace of mind, and I think it's worth it, and it's a one-time cost. Now, with all this said, I don't want to make it seem like I'm calling out people who do Montana, because I would do it under certain circumstances. For instance, if I had a Veyron or a Wyra or something like that, it was a $2 million car, sales tax 7-8% on that, it's like $150,000 for a license plate. It's one thing when you spent $15,000 and you're like, all right, fine. It's a whole other story when you're spending $150 grand for a license plate. In that circumstance, I would definitely start to look into the legality of it and maybe, okay, this is a loophole worth pursuing at that dollar amount. The other big reason I would do Montana is to avoid California's crazy emissions rules. I'm a big fan of most emissions rules. We got to cut down on pollution. But California has some really insane ones, including California basically bans direct import cars. So like that Nissan S Cargo that I imported from Japan years ago, you could never register that in California. Even though it would pass emissions here, California has all these rules that it has to go through before they even allow it to try to pass emissions. It's so stupid. And so I would register in Montana under those circumstances. But I mean, just driving around, I see like a guy in a 911 Turbo. Not a $150,000 car, he saved 10 grand, and so he drives around Montana plates to save 10 grand. It's like, dude, can you afford this thing or not? I'm not into that. So that's the story of the $17,000 license plate. Now, next up, I want to move on to service. I've already had this car serviced, which is one of the reasons I haven't done any videos on it in the last month since I got it. Finding a place to service it was hard. I was really nervous about it. I don't want to take it to my local Ford dealer. You know, you pull in next to a Focus with 9995 written on the windshield. It just doesn't seem like the place to bring a supercar. Fortunately, a friend of mine recommended a shop here in the San Diego area called HG Autohaus. They mainly work on Porsches, race cars, GTRs, but I figured even though they don't specialize in Ford GT, you know, they know how to handle a nice car. And so they did a bunch of servicing for me. Particularly they replaced the battery, they did a bunch of fluids, replaced the air filter, the wiper blades, they did an alignment. They also replaced the fuel gauge. Now the gauges in this car was its main problem. They were constantly breaking, basically from new. Everybody who has one of these has either replaced one or more gauges or has never driven the car. There's only two types of gauges in Ford GTs, the ones that are broken or the ones that are going to break. So I replaced the fuel gauge. There is now an updated part where it won't break anymore, and so they did that. They also did an oil change. Oil change on this car is not incredibly easy. You got to lift the car up, you got to pull off the under trays. The cost for that oil change is $366, as you can see here. That's about what I've heard. I've heard dealers charge $330, so it's right in line. Why did I have to service the car right away? Nothing was broken, nothing was going on, but when I buy a used car, I want to be able to use it and drive it. And I just want everything to just be done so I don't have to worry about it anymore, and then I can get it back and I can just drive it without fear. So I just wanted to take it in and get everything done, clean bill of health so I can use it. Now, in my last video, I mentioned about this car that I'm excited because this is a reliable supercar. And a lot of people replied, well, Jeremy Clarkson had a lot of problems with his. Well, okay, here's how that went. Jeremy Clarkson was in the UK and he bought a Ford GT because it's awesome. And then his insurance company, in order to insure the car, mandated that he get an alarm with an immobilizer that would kill the engine if someone tried to steal it. This alarm never was able to work correctly with the GT's electrics or whatever, and that's why he had so many problems. I don't have the Jeremy Clarkson alarm in my car, and so I don't expect it to be an issue. And the prior owner of this car said he had the car for 13 years and never did anything outside of regular maintenance and maybe a few random repairs here or there. Not a concern for me. Now, the last big item I did when I bought the car is I had the whole car clear broad. Basically what this means is a clear film is placed over the entire car to protect the paint, which is why I feel comfortable kind of laying over it like this. The clear film makes me a lot less nervous to drive it. You don't have to worry about rock chips coming up. You don't have to worry about people walking by it and kind of their belt rubbing on it and scratching the paint. So you don't have to worry about stuff like that, and it's just really nice to do. I did the clear film at this place called BODEN AUTOHAUS up in Orange County, and they're incredible, absolutely incredible work. On their Instagram page, they have pictures of Koenigsegg's and Pagani's, and so my little pipsqueak Ford GT went up there, but they did an amazing job. And you can just see, obviously, the level of work they're putting into putting it on, but also when I got the car back, I was looking at it and I was like, oh, they missed this panel. And then what I realized is it was just barely detectable that the film is even on there. They didn't miss any panels. You just can barely tell. Only if you run your finger over certain places can you actually tell this car was clear film. So it just looks perfect. And now I don't have to worry about rock chips and stuff. Now, a car like this, generally owners do the clear film. And it's unusual that the original owner of this car didn't, but he told me that when he bought the car back in 2005, the clear film technology kind of sucked. It kind of screwed with the paint finish. It didn't look so good, and so he never bothered doing it. And then he just never got any rock chips, so he never did it at any point. But I figured if I wanted to drive this thing and not worry about it, especially given where values are today, I wanted to do the clear film. So the service was $2,800, give or take, for all the fluids, the gauge, the battery, everything. And the clear film was about $7,000. Which is incredibly expensive, but it's a one-time deal. This clear film lasts 10, 12, 15 years. You don't have to do it again. And to me, it was worth it. And so, if you add it all up, $7,000 for the clear film, about $3,000 for the service here at 10, the license plate, and my first insurance payment of around $1,000, and I've already spent $28,000 on my GT. Fortunately for me, I can tax deduct a lot of this stuff. I can write it off because I treat these cars as business expenses, since this is my job and this is my income and I'm providing content about it, and all the other YouTubers do the same thing. And so that's where I am. Fortunately, a lot of those costs are one-time costs I won't have to incur again, and now I can just focus on enjoying this thing and not worrying about it and having fun.